So let's get into the course. So this is based on this course content called Penetration Testing with Azure. This course hasn't been released yet, but the course creator, Slavi, is one of our red team experts. He's done some of the other eLearn security courses outside of just the red team related stuff, but Slavi is a really talented consultant and engineer, and comes up with some really great content. We were really excited when he came up with this course. And you need the cloud expert. So our very own Tracy Wallace was involved with helping Slavi with this course. He was kind of like a subject matter expert for some of the cloud related stuff, helped set up the environment for him to build the course in. And so here's kind of the way the breakout of the course. You have the initial access. We're going to go over the Azure kill chain. I know some of you have heard of the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. So this is kind of taking in consideration that same kind of concept, along with initial access, phishing, password guessing, and on-prem Azure Active Directory initial access, and then access to Azure and MFA bypass options. So someone said, please repeat again, if you want to be a hacker, INE is good and pen tester. Yes, it's kind of the opposite. So if you want to be a pen tester, then INE is the way to go. OffSec is more hacking, because the interesting thing about their content is like what the type of pen test boutique pen test firms do, where they're not concerned with finding every single vulnerability. They're going through and trying to find things that can be exploited. It's kind of a different specialization. The normal pen testing skills are more applicable, and you'll find more jobs where you're doing that type of pen testing. And that's usually where someone starts out with the more pen testing skills. Yeah, this will be available. This will be recorded. Yeah, and Don brings up a good point. Don is our community director. We focus on preparing you for the job, not just some cool hacker tricks. And that's true. Like I mentioned to back my colleague, that he took the OSCP, and when he started pen testing, he said, this is a lot different than OSCP, because they don't let you use vulnerability scanners. That's part of the job. Vulnerability scanners make your life easier. If you've got thousands of IP addresses to test, going through and manually testing all of them can be kind of difficult. You need to be able to do the manual testing, but there's a lot of things that you don't get to use in the exam. So you made it. Mike, good to see you here. Brian said it seems like a lot of this will apply to cloud platforms providers. Am I right? Yeah, some of this will be cloud more specific, but this course is more specific towards Azure. And along the way, I'll fill in my experiences with the different types of attacks and stuff. So will there be a corresponding certification with the new cloud course once released? That I'm not sure about yet. I haven't heard any updates on any of the certifications, but I would think that there will probably be some cloud pen testing certs coming out. So this is the initial access piece that we just covered there. Enumeration and privilege escalation. This covers enumerating Azure and Azure AD from different roles, identifying and abusing escalation paths, on-prem attacks. So this is abuse on-prem technologies to access Azure, golden SAML past the PRT, and on-prem AD attacks to gain privilege access to Azure. So that's kind of the outline of this course. Let's go over here and we got some questions. Let's see, were you a Kali guy in early days or Parrot OS? Actually, David, I started out with Backtrack before the predecessor to Kali Linux. I've become a Parrot OS fan because I was doing a Wi-Fi pen test last year for my employer. And one of the things I was running into is getting some of the tools to work on Kali Linux, and then trying to get some of the Wi-Fi drivers to work, and then also trying to get Hashcat working to crack hashes and stuff. So my pen test laptop at the company was bare metal running Kali Linux, and I ended up wiping it clean and using Parrot OS, because one of the things I've liked about Parrot OS is they had some good instructions on how to get Hashcat working to get the GPU drivers working. And this was not like on a message board or forum. This was actual document from support at Parrot OS. So I was able to get this GPU driver working on the laptop I had. It was a 15-minute article and it worked like a charm. I mean, I didn't really run into that experience a lot with Kali Linux. And Kali's kind of copying Parrot OS because they've kind of, like before, used to, both of them. Well, I'm not sure when Parrot went to non-root login, but Kali Linux, that's kind of something new for them, something that just happened in the past year, a little over the past year, something that Parrot was doing. Parrot was using Z Shell. Kali Linux recently went to Z Shell. So, competition is always a good thing. That's just kind of like Burp Suite, OWASP Zap. They both improve because there's competition. But currently, a lot of times I'll use a Kali Linux VM for a workshop or something I'm teaching, because a lot of the tools are there. But for the most part, most of the Kali tools or the Parrot OS tools are there. So I've become a big fan of Parrot OS, and I use both of them. So the corporate user says, I'm a beginner to Kuber security. What is your recommendations? So if you're referring to like Kubernetes, and I really don't have any recommendations on that security wise, I would go out there and just study up on Kubernetes and some of the other containerization stuff like Docker, learn the technology. Because one of the things with pen testing is once you learn the basics, then you can learn new skills. I didn't know cloud pen testing, but then some of the things like vulnerability scanning and exploiting, I learned from doing other types of pen testing. So I was able to transfer that over to what I'm doing now, doing the cloud stuff. So can you explain what the professional difference is between pen testing and hacking? Okay, so pen testing is more of a, I guess you say, a professional term for penetration testing. It's an actual assessment type. Hacking could be just someone from, a good guy or a bad guy trying to break into a network. Pen testing, you have permission. Pen testing is, hacking is a skill, and pen testing is a type of assessment. So hacking, knowing how to exploit Windows, that's part of hacking. Pen testing, you're doing an assessment. So you're not only hacking in, you're looking for other vulnerabilities as well. So I guess that's kind of my best way to explain it. And a lot of times when you're telling people that you're a penetration tester, it's easier to describe an ethical hacker, but then you still get the question, is there such a thing? So anonymous attendee said, do you think eLearn cert will be recognized as offensive security, mainly with HR? It's becoming, with my experience, it's becoming more well-known. I know some people at a local consulting company here in Dallas, and they actually recommend the training, and they even look for that cert when hiring people. And one of their senior pen testers just was taking the exam for our professional pen tester certification. So these are very highly skilled people that respect it. I think it's just a matter of time before it gets more industry recognition. It's getting more, was getting industry recognition, and Don may know better than I do because Don's been with eLearn Security for a while, that it gets quite a bit of recognition in Europe. And you can compare to that some of the CREST certifications that you see over in Europe that are more widely, respected and sought after than they are in the US. So I think it's just a matter of time. Our management team and our director, Neil, they want to make these certifications more respected. So we're trying to improve upon the course content and try to make it more industry recognized. And I think what part is going to help there is like the INE brand. We're, people that weren't aware of pen testing that are INE subscribers, have been customers, they're starting to learn about the eLearn security certifications through INE. So I think the popularity will catch on. It's just a matter of time. And so Aaron said, what can we do if a website has Cloudflare? I think This is at protect IP address. You would have to try it to see if you can do any kind of WAF type bypass or something like that. Justice said, what other red team courses apart from cloud pen testing is INE working on? Currently right now, there's nothing outside of that, but there will be more stuff to come. But we're updating the current content, improving upon what we have, and adding more new tools. So along with the cloud stuff, we're also adding that. Okay. So yeah, the certifications are going to depend on the company, because some people even ask for the certified ethical hacker, and if I was a hiring manager somewhere, that would probably be one of the least certifications that I would consider. So that a lot of that's just going to be getting out there and socializing these certifications. So as far as you being certification holders, share that with your friends, share that with your managers, different people. A lot of it's going to be awareness. Once people's aware of it and they see that it's actually a practical certification, because once you get to the professional pen tester and the other content, it's practical exams. So with the practical exams, that's one of the reasons that the offensive security stuff's popular. The SAN stuff is not practical exams, and then some of these other certifications. So I think it's just it'll catch on. So that completes this slide. So I've got great questions, and I love the interaction. Okay. Okay, so penetration testing and authorization. So this is a very important part of a pen test. So what is pen testing and the rules of engagement for Azure pen testing? So these are two important things that we need to discuss before we dig into the content a little deeper. So what is pen testing and what is the objective of a pen test? So pen testing is assessing security from an adversarial perspective, and there's different levels of doing this. So you have your more adversarial type simulation, which part of what we're going to be covering here could actually fall under that realm. And then your traditional pen testing, you're not necessarily trying to emulate a threat actor or nation state. You're going through and you're using the different adversarial techniques to perform a pen test. So you're going through trying to find vulnerabilities and exploiting those vulnerabilities, also known as hacking. So you're trying to hack into those vulnerabilities. And so, you hear the term, and it was mentioned ethical hacking. So these are where those skills come into play. So you're using these hacking skills to assess the security of your target. And this is whether it's cloud, network, wireless, or application. So a lot of that's going to stay similar in the spirit. And so another good resource for some of the pen testing stuff is the PTES, the Penetration Testing Execution Standard, is a good resource out there for pen testing. It takes you through the different steps of the methodology and the pre-engagement activities. And here we kind of see some of the pre-engagement activities. This is what you would see in the PTES standard. So penetration test preparation and agreement. So you need to define the scope of the pen test. And so you define the scope. And one of the things as a good pen tester or consultant, you want to make sure that you're helping the customer select a successful scope. So it's up to you to help them, because the people you're working with a lot of times don't understand pen testing. So it's up to you to guide them in the right direction. What are their goals? So a lot of times the goals are for compliance. They're trying to meet PCI compliance, maybe HIPAA or some other type of, or SOX. So you need to help them tailor the scope towards their pen test. A lot of times they have things in mind, and I've seen consultants that will go through and just give the customer exactly what they want. And sometimes if you try to help, sometimes they view that as upselling, but really you're just trying to help them, have the best success and provide them with what they need for their pen test. So you really want to work on that. So time, so the time that you're actually going to be performing the pen test. And so sometimes companies want you to test after hours because they don't want it to affect production. Living in a global world, that can be kind of tricky. So that may be more focused on the area that you do most of your business in. So if you have an application that most of your customers are in India, then you're going to want to test in other hours and vice versa. If you're a bank in the United States, then after hours, you could have a resource in another country. And this is one of the good things about be able to test remotely. It's opened up opportunities in other countries, and the pandemic has helped increase that even more. So a lot of times people don't want tested during business hours. And then there's also another school of thought with that. If you test after hours and something breaks, it needs to be fixed to back online. So maybe support is asleep or whatever. So there's different ways of doing this. And, sometimes pen tests can cause outages. At a minimum, you're putting a little more stress on the network by running, your vulnerability scans. But most cases, you really shouldn't take anything down. But a lot of people are really worried about taking down networks or causing outages. So let's see. Tobias says, how deep should you go with learning the basics? For example, which should you know Linux? So yeah, you should, as far as the basics, I would say with your operating systems, learn a sysadmin level. With your networking, you're not exactly going to be going through and learning like Cisco. You're learning routing and, the OSI model, subnetting and that sort of stuff. But that's about as deep as you need to go. You don't have to, be able to master it all, but you need an understanding of it, because if you're going to pivot from one network to another, you need to understand how routing works. You need to understand how subnetting works. That way, when you get like an IP address and they give you a subnet mask, you know how, you can calculate the number of IPs if needed to. So can you put a link for that in the chat? David, could you tell me what you wanted put in the chat? So yeah, if you can, David, if you can just follow up with that, I can see what you're asking for. Let's see. Hassan says, what do I need to get my first pen testing job? And if this domain requires highly skilled people, so can I achieve that? Can you please tell us how to start in the field? Facing now 90% of the recruiters prefer pen testers with experience. Well, some of those things you're going to have to, you can do like bug bounties. Bug bounties is a good way to learn. So bug bounties. And then you take like Cobalt. Cobalt does pen testing, and a lot of that's remote. And they'll take people without experience. They'll take people, if you're doing hack the box to get experience, you have some certifications and you know how to do a pen test, you can apply with Cobalt.io and some of these other bug bounty companies. So that's a good way to get experience. Once you've got that experience, and I was interviewing for a job last year, and the hiring manager of this company said that it's easier to find web app pen testers due to bug bounties. So that was kind of confirmation to one of the things I was sharing with customers, with students over the years on how to get in. So let me see here. Let me share this. So I'm not sure. I think this PTES is a good, as far as standard customer agreements. I'm going to go ahead and here's PTES. This has a lot of good information there. I'm not sure if that was exactly what you're looking for. So Maurice says, how do you think the development of AI, machine learning, SIEM, SOAR solutions such as Sentinel will influence the future of pen testers? I think it'll just make it the pen testing job a little more difficult. You just have to learn how to obfuscate better and that sort of thing. But I see people getting around that a lot. Was listening to a recent Black Hills podcast. They say some of the exploits now that you're not actually performing on the endpoints. You're actually performing, like from your system attached to the network or not directly connected to an endpoint. So the tools will evolve on that too. So just kind of keep an eye out on the industry, see what people are using out there. Oh, thanks for the comment, Robert. So, okay, the time. So this is the amount of time, the information from the customer. So when you're scoping your pen test, you want to know what's in scope for the pen test. So for a network pen test, this is IP addresses, domain names. So within, Azure, you're going to want to get that scope clearly defined. You don't want to go out of scope, and you really want to be careful, especially when you do a network pen test, to check and make sure that you're only testing the person's environment that you're performing the pen test against. And also back to the time too. The time is not only the amount of the time of testing, but the amount of time given on the pen test. Because sometimes people refer to as pen testing as a time box assessment. So you've got like a certain amount of time. If you're an internal resource, sometimes you have more time to perform the pen test. And then you also need your get out of jail free card, which you hear a lot about. Physically, with the social engineering or more of the physical assessments, you'll see more of that kind of stuff out there. Some of this might have been one of the links someone was asking for as well. I'll copy that, put it out there. So yeah, if you have like internal pen tests, sometimes you have longer to do the pen test. I've done network pen tests before where I was giving the wrong scope. They gave me wrong IPs and I was testing another company. So you need that get out of jail free card. And part of this is usually part of the statement of work. So this shows that you have permission. Most pen tests, there will be an email going out to the different support people and the business people that are over that environment affects, to let them know that the pen test is being performed. And you need your list of contacts. So you need someone to contact in case things, in case something goes down. That way you can contact support to get it back up running quickly. So those are some considerations to take there as well. So let's see. I have some questions here with security measures in general getting better over time. Do you feel there'll always be a job market for ethical hacking and pen testing? I think there will. Technology is always evolving, and it's just going to be a matter of you just got to keep your skills sharp, because as some of the tools that they create for defense, people will keep creating hacking tools and pen testing tools. So Palmy asked if the slides will be available. They'll be the course recorded course content will be available. I don't know that the slides, if they offer the slides in specific, but the videos will be available. Okay. Okay. And so yeah, as far as you need the permission to perform the pen test, there's some of the authorization piece going through and getting approval. Before there was more detail that you need. I mean, there was more intel in getting permission to do a pen test. And so now a lot of these companies, if you follow their rules, a lot of cases you don't have to go out and get specific information or specific permission. And so here we'll go ahead and I'll couple documents we're going to go over here for Microsoft. Okay. Yeah, Microsoft has a really good document on how to perform or what's entailed in a pen test. That's a good document to review, to kind of follow Microsoft's rules and stuff. So let me share this. Okay, so here we have this link here on Microsoft's website, and I will share this up in chat so you all have access to it. So someone says, I need a new hairdo, need a haircut. Yeah, I cut it yesterday and I do it myself. So I save a lot of money on haircuts, but I spend more money on razor blades than most people do, unless you have a really heavy beard that you have to shave. So here is some information here on, and you can go to this Microsoft link, security control penetration test, red team exercises. And so this kind of goes into some detail about pen testing, test the overall strength of an organization's defense. So kind of giving their description, the technology, the process, and people by simulating the objectives. So this is more really a red team description there, because people and processes usually aren't typically tested outside of like a red team engagement, but they will also take in consideration how quickly someone responds to the attacks and stuff. Usually people know what's going on. Red team engagement, you will go through and talk about, red team engagement, you'll try to keep that quiet. So because you're testing the response. And so this tells us that, that you could go through and see, conduct regular penetration tests of your Azure resources, ensure remediation of all critical issues. And so this even goes into Microsoft Cloud red teaming. So these are some different code samples there. And so this one document here, and this is the rules of engagement. So this kind of lets you know what you can do during a pen test. So just like the rules of engagement that you're creating for a customer, you want to stay within in the scope of this. So the introduction of purpose, this document describes unifies rules of engagement for customers wishing to perform penetration tests against their Microsoft Cloud components. So it's defined below. And this is important because this is a shared environment. So they want to really be careful what's going on in their environment, because you can, even though you may have a separate environment, if you're on a shared server, you're affecting performance of other servers, even networks. So that's kind of important there. So care must be taken to limit all penetration tests to your assets to avoid unintended consequences to other customers. You could accidentally hack someone else. So that's one of the things that you want to be careful of. And so going through the scope, the purpose of rules engagement with Microsoft Cloud is defined as including the following Microsoft products. So Azure Active Directory, Microsoft Intune, Microsoft Azure, Microsoft Dynamic 365, Microsoft Account, Office 365, and Azure DevOps. Reporting security issues. If during the penetration test you believe you discovered potential security flaws that are related to Microsoft Cloud on any other services, please follow the instructions here. So there's a link. So if you find a bug, so it's almost, think about it as a bug bounty. They've got a link up here. So in case you find a bug, you can report that. And so that's kind of a good thing to report, because if you're actually be able to find bugs like that, that's kind of cool. But don't go out of your scope to find those. So if you find something during that time you report it, they got like a link to their vulnerability disclosure program, And there's also a bounty at Microsoft to send those to. So they offer rewards. I mean, much like Apple, they offer rewards. I'm not sure how well their bugs pay, but that's good practice. You know, it's one of the things that you can put in your resume that you found a bug in Azure's infrastructure. A lot of times, depending on the disclosure rules, you may not be able to go into details, but you can at least say that you found a bug on their platform. So rules of engagement perform penetration testing on Microsoft Cloud. The goal of this program is enable customers to test their services hosted on Microsoft Cloud services without causing harm to any other Microsoft customers. So the following activities are prohibited. So scanning or testing assets belonging to any other Microsoft customer. So a lot of these things are common. This is a shared environment. So this is where some of the rules of engagement is going to be a little bit different. Gaining access to any data that is not wholly your own. So basically the thing you really need to remember here is leave other people's environments alone and stick to your own. Don't feel that need if you get all excited and see something that you might be able to breach or access someone else's environment, leave it alone. So that's pretty much the big takeaway here is only test your own stuff. So not performing any kind of denial of service testing. Most pen tests, they don't want you to perform that. And as a consultant and working internally, I don't know how many times I've had people come up and explicitly say, we don't want denial of service testing done. So that's one of the things that you want to do there. So you want to make sure that you're not doing denial of service. Outside of cloud, some companies may want to do that. Maybe they're wanting to test their Cloudflare, some kind of WAF, some kind of DOS protection. They may want to test it. But typically, you're only going to do denial of service testing if someone asks you, and that's usually not the case. So performing network intensive fuzzing against any assets except your Azure virtual machine, performing automated testing or services that generate significant amounts of traffic. So you just don't want to overload the systems, causing like a denial of service type response, deliberately accessing any other customer's data, moving beyond proof of concept, reproduction steps, for instance, for infrastructure executions, i.e. proving that you have system administrator accessing with SQLi is acceptable, running XP command shell is not. So you can prove that SQL injection can happen, but they're telling you not to run XP command shell and get command line access, which is that can actually happen. I've done a web app pen test before where through SQL injection, I got command line access to a server through it was actually a Microsoft IIS server running an application and Microsoft SQL server, and they had XP command shell running. Typically, you don't want that running because it's a risky service to run. It can be exploited. So using our services in a way that violates acceptable use of policy set forth by Microsoft. So a lot of things you want to look at the terms of use and really understand that, just like this rules of engagement before you do that, before you test in their environment. It's good to be familiar with the different platforms as well, AWS and all that, kind of a good idea. Attempting phishing or other social engineering attacks against our employees. So this doesn't mean that if you're testing your customer that you can't social engineer their customers. And so that's a big step in initial access for Azure Cloud Pen Testing. The following activities are encouraged: create small numbers of test accounts or trial tenants, demonstrating and providing cross account or cross tenant access. However, it is prohibited to use one of these accounts to access the data of other customers or account, fuzz, port scan, or run vulnerability assessment tools against your own Azure virtual machine. Load testing your application by generating traffic, which is expected to be seen during normal course of business. These include testing surge capabilities, testing security monitor and detection, generating anomalous security logs, dropping an EICAR, etc., attempting to break out of shared service containers such as Azure websites or Azure functions. However, should you succeed, you must both immediately report to Microsoft and cease digging deeper. Deliberately accessing other customers' data is a violation of terms. Applying conditional access or mobile application management policies with Microsoft Intune to test the enforcement of restrictions by those policies. So it's encouraging to do that. Even with these prohibitions, Microsoft reserves the right to respond to any actions on its network that appears malicious. Many automated mechanisms are employed across Microsoft's cloud. These are not disabled to facilitate penetration tests. So they're not going to disable this like you may do a web application pen test for a company, and they may allow your IP address so it's not blocked to perform the test. So they're saying here they're not going to disable anything to let you perform the testing. So yeah, account lockout, for example. So yeah, that's one of the reasons too, having multiple accounts. So if you're doing something, you lock out, you've got multiple accounts if you need to. So Pommy said, would password spraying be considered automated testing of services that generate significant amount of traffic? That wouldn't, it would, it would slightly, it wouldn't be too bad. It wouldn't be like a denial of service type of activity. Because one of the things too, this is used a lot of times for red teams. And so they're usually doing things that are not easily detected. So it's typically not. Okay, so basically the takeaway there is to make sure you're only testing your own environment. You're not trying to hack into Microsoft's assets and that sort of thing. So that's the key takeaway there. That's pretty easy to remember. Just stick to your own environment, just like any good pen tester needs to stick to their scope.